Imagine this. Um, just a chilling enigma. A whole series of violent crimes stretching over decades, hundreds of miles apart.
And they're linked, right? Disturbing similarities, but the person responsible just vanishes for years.
Exactly. That's the Shadow, the Golden State Killer cast. Yeah. California was terrified.
It really is stark, isn't it? A reminder that, well, evil can look completely ordinary, operating right under everyone's noses for so long.
And Michelle McNamara's book, I'll Be Gone in the Dark.
Yeah.
It's not just recounting crimes.
No, it pulls you right in, into her obsessive quest for answers. It digs into the patterns, the haunting details that really define that whole terrifying time.
It's incredibly intense.
And for anyone listening who wants to, dig even deeper into understanding investigations like this, check out Mindful Moments. It's our YouTube channel. We use AI for book analysis there, and it's really designed to get you thinking, reflecting critically on these complex cases.
Okay, so let's start with his methods, the attacker's methods. That meticulous pre-planning. It became his signature, really.
Yeah, what really stands out is the sheer audacity and the control he was after.
Going into homes beforehand, sometimes more than once.
Right. It wasn't just scouting. It feels more like a psychological invasion before the attack even happened. Disabling lights, unlocking doors.
Even emptying bullets from guns people owned.
Exactly. These weren't impulsive things. They were calculated steps, all about ensuring dominance, making sure there was basically zero chance of resistance.
And then that first terrifying moment for the victims, woken by a flashlight beam, completely disoriented.
And then that whisper. That chilling guttural whisper.
Which wasn't always consistent, was it?
No, and that's significant. The shifts in pitch, sometimes a tremble or a stutter. It's like a little glimpse behind that mask of control. It hints at something raw, maybe some fundamental unease underneath all the calculation.
You wonder if those vocal clues were a key.
Could have been. Something about his underlying psychology, perhaps.
McNamara had this compelling idea, didn't she? That despite how perfect the crime seemed, it would ultimately be human error. That's what would crack the case.
That's such a powerful perspective, especially when you think about how many decades went by, so many dead ends. It would have been easy to just give up.
Absolutely.
But she and those retired detectives who were just as obsessed, they clung to that belief that somewhere in that mountain of details, there was a mistake, something overlooked.
It really speaks to hope, doesn't it? And just sheer tenacity against impossible odds.
Totally. The human spirit,
Her yellow legal pads. They almost become this symbol.
Oh, absolutely. A tangible symbol of that whole investigative journey. Each pad, you imagine, held a new theory, a new lead, just painstaking notes.
The number of them.
It just shows the immense effort, the emotional weight of this case that just stayed cold for so long. A visual reminder of the dedication.
The book takes us back to an early crime. 1979, Manuela Withone in Irvine. And it mentions her home had the willow floor plan. Was that significant?
Well, focusing on the willow plan is interesting. You have to wonder, did that specific layout offer something? Easier access, maybe. Better sight lines.
Or maybe it was just common in the areas he hit, suggesting he knew the area.
Right. Or was there something about the design itself he liked? Trying to figure that out might give us clues about how he picked his targets.
Finding Manuela's body, the ligatures, the head wounds, just brutal. And that detail about the shoe sole pattern, suggesting a kind of slivering watchfulness, that's incredibly disturbing.
It really paints a picture, doesn't it? A predator who wasn't just violent, but deliberately stealthy, observant.
And the fact he stopped leaving ligatures later.
Shows he was learning, right? Becoming more aware of forensics, a definite learning curve.
Manuela's brother, Drew, he was just a cop in training then, finding that piece of evidence everyone else missed.
That's such a powerful moment. It really highlights how, even when investigations are super meticulous, that human element, sharp observation, is still vital.
His personal connection, his determination.
Yeah, and his sharp eye. It proved invaluable. Shows how one dedicated person can find something critical that just slipped through the cracks of standard procedure.
And his belief in his brother David's innocence, even when police were suspicious. That says a lot.
It does. But then you have the flip side, the tragedy of David's survivor's guilt. And the parents desperately looking for someone to blame. It's just palpable.
It really shows the ripple effect, how far the devastation spreads.
Absolutely. The emotional toll on families is just immense. It can cause so much internal conflict, that desperate need for answers, even if they end up pointing in the wrong direction.
Then there's criminalist Jim White at the Withun scene. So methodical, collecting tiny things, mud, bloodstains.
Things that might seem minor at the time, but that's often what becomes crucial later, especially with forensic advances.
Exactly. That foresight, collecting and preserving trace evidence, even when you don't know its immediate value, that's the foundation for these long-term investigations.
White's thoroughness really laid the groundwork for technologies he couldn't have even imagined back then.
Okay, let's jump to 1981, the Dana Point murders. Keith and Patty Harrington. Again, no forced entry.
Right. Which continues that pattern. Either unlocked doors or he got in earlier undetected. Suggests confidence or maybe familiarity.
And the grocery receipt giving that tight timeline.
Yeah, that receipt provides a solid time frame. Shows his boldness, too, acting so soon after Patty had been running errands, made a phone call.
And the weapon. A brass sprinkler head? That's unusual.
Very unusual. It makes you wonder, was it just there? Readily available? Or did it mean something specific to him?
And used with such extreme force against people already bound and compliant.
It points to this deep-seated rage, doesn't it? Beyond just wanting control. Possibly, like McNamara suggests, fueled by this profound misogyny.
Then there's Roger Harrington's search. Years and years. Hiring a PI, offering rewards, even consulting a clairvoyant.
It's heartbreaking. It just shows that agonizing limbo families of unsolved crime victims live in. That willingness to try absolutely anything. It speaks to that desperate need for justice, for some kind of peace.
Then we have that scene, McNamara, at a Hollywood premiere in 2009. She hears about some other fugitive being caught.
Joseph Henry Burgess, yeah. A long-sought fugitive.
But her focus just snaps right back to her own hunt for the Golden State Killer.
That moment really says it all about her dedication, doesn't it? Even amidst all the Hollywood glitz, her mind is locked onto this case. It just shows how deep her commitment ran, how personal it was.
The book touches on her background, too. Her family, her teenage crush on Danny Ellis, hinting at that intense focus early on.
Yeah, looking at her formative years gives you context for why she became so obsessed later. That early intensity suggests she was naturally drawn to digging deep, maybe unraveling mysteries.
But it seems like the real catalyst was Kathleen Lombardo's murder, unsolved near her home.
Finding those pieces of Kathleen's Walkman.
Yeah, that seems pivotal. A local tragedy that sparked that lifelong interest in true crime. Seeing those tangible fragments of a life cut short, it likely had a huge impact. Set her on that path.
And the initial lead in that Lombardo case, the African-American man in a yellow tank top, which turned out to be wrong.
A stark reminder, isn't it, about bias creaking into investigations early on.
Definitely. It underscores how critical objective evidence is and the danger of letting assumptions or, societal biases steer things. It's a cautionary tale. Need for thoroughness and open mind.
And Kathleen's cousins, who found her body.
Yeah.
They remembered things differently.
Right? It shows how tricky memory can be, especially after trauma. Eyewitness accounts are valuable, sure, but they're not always perfect. Memory is subjective. Stress, perception, it all plays a part. Makes piecing together the exact truth from recollections really complex.
Which brings us to the East Area Rapist, the EER, starting in Sacramento, 76, 77.
The attack on Jane Carson. That detail about the light switch, the sound of running, It establishes that pattern early on. Psychological manipulation.
Creating fear and confusion right away, giving him the advantage.
Yeah, it speaks to a calculated predatory mindset right from the start.
And the physical details noted by that teenage victim in Fair Oaks. The black square-toed shoes, military fatigue pants.
Seemingly small things, but they become significant. Even under extreme stress, her observations provided crucial descriptive bits that helped later on. And his fidgeting maybe points to some underlying anxiety.
You get the sense of investigators just growing weary. That quote, exactly the same as all the rest.
Yeah, it conveys the sheer volume of attacks, the feeling of chasing a ghost, a community terrified, and law enforcement just struggling to keep up with this relentless pace.
The repetition revealed a pattern, but it must have been incredibly frustrating, feeling overwhelmed.
Absolutely. And then the Carmichael attack. The bound woman hearing her little daughter shushing her.
Oh, that's just chilling. Heartbreaking. Domestic terror.
It's so haunting. Shows the impact on families, the trauma, even for the youngest ones. The child's instinct to protect her mom in that situation, just incredibly poignant.
And realizing robbery wasn't the main motive. He'd discard valuables.
Right. That shifts the focus, doesn't it? Away from just theft to something darker. Sexual assault, power, control, degradation. Leaving the valuables makes it clear the goal was violation, terror.
Then he introduces the cup and saucer, placed on the bound man's back.
Bizarre. and terrifying. It's such a cruel, manipulative signature move, designed to instill constant fear, emphasize the victim's total helplessness, hints at a real sadistic streak.
And he seemed to know police procedures, wearing gloves, parking outside search perimeters.
Yeah, that suggests cunning, maybe even prior run-ins with the law. These actions show a calculated effort to avoid getting caught, intelligence, and a conscious effort to stay one step ahead.
The question of insider knowledge, hard to prove, but it lingers, given how familiar he seemed with police tactics.
It does, and the community's reaction. Pruning trees way back, installing floodlights, people arming themselves.
Changing how they slept. It shows how deeply their sense of safety was just gone.
Absolutely. People felt they had to turn their homes into fortresses, altering their whole lives just trying to feel safe.
The Del Dio attack. His outburst about pigs, threatening to kill more if it was publicized.
Gives you a glimpse, doesn't it, into this volatile, narcissistic personality, deep resentment for law enforcement, wanting to control the story.
And the boast about having an apartment with bunches of televisions?
Mm-hmm.
So strange. Almost surreal.
It really is. Then you have Fiona's memory. The garage door found open before her attack. The blank-faced man at the realtor's open house.
These little lingering, unsettling details, they often turn out to be important, don't they?
They often do. Seemingly insignificant things can be key pieces later. Fiona's unease maybe suggests he tried before or was doing reconnaissance, highlights how methodical he was in picking targets.
And Detective Shelby. He connected the cases early on, saw the serial pattern, but he got reassigned.
Yeah, his early insight was significant. His reassignment, though, it kind of illustrates the bureaucratic hurdles, the internal politics that can sometimes slow down complex cases, even when you have promising leads.
Even the public defender's office was worried about his notoriety poisoning jury pools for other cases.
That just shows the level of terror he created. His infamy was so widespread, it was seen as potentially compromising unrelated trials.
Then the focus shifts to the ransacker in Visalia, a different, really bizarre MO.
Totally different. Targeting personal items, destroying photos, pouring liquids on clothes, stealing trinkets, unplugging things.
And the sexual element, rifling through underwear, posing it. And that specific detail, Vaseline intensive care hand lotion.
It is peculiar, a strange mix of, petty theft and these deeply unsettling personal violations. The focus on specific items, the lotion, points to a complex, disturbed psychology, different from the era's more direct violence initially.
But then it connects. The stolen handgun used later. The fatal encounter with Claude Snelling, who confronted a peeper.
Right. That marks an escalation, a dangerous shift. Shows the ransacker was willing to use deadly force when confronted. Links him to much more serious crimes.
Detective McGowan's pursuit. Nearly getting killed. Brings the danger investigators face right home.
Absolutely. A vivid reminder of the risks they take. And then Carl's encounter with the prowler outside his girlfriend's window.
Another description. And that weird detail about the accent. A slow, dull, oaky accent. And pretending he had an accomplice.
Yeah, another unusual detail. That accent could be a key identifier, maybe. Or maybe another deliberate misdirection.
Which leads us towards the era of DNA. A huge shift from those older methods. Alec Jeffrey's discovery in '84.
Revolutionary. Completely changed forensic science. Before that, it was much less precise. DNA fingerprinting brought this unprecedented level of certainty, linking people to crime scenes.
And criminalist Mary Hong picking up those cold cases, Whiffen and Harrington, prompted by Jim White, who always believed they were connected.
Right. White's intuition plus Hong applying this new tech to these old cold cases, that was pivotal, the start of potentially linking crimes decades apart.
Explaining DNA typing as a unique human barcode that makes it easy to grasp.
It's a simple, effective analogy, and that story about 13th century China, the blowflies on the sickle.
Fascinating. Shows the basic idea of using natural clues isn't new at all.
Exactly. And you see the different approaches, cops and criminalists, but they share that human connection, like the mention of Patty Harrington's baby blanket.
Yeah, it grounds it. Despite the science, the different roles, the goal is the same. Justice for victims, for families. That blanket is such a poignant reminder of the lives shattered.
Then, Janelle Cruz's murder in 1986. Linked by DNA, big time gap, different victim profile. But she lived in the same Irvine subdivision as Whiffen.
Only 2 miles away. That was a huge breakthrough. Definitively linked a later crime to the earlier series. Suggested he still had ties to that area or familiarity.
Chilling.
Larry Poole gets assigned these cold cases, and he finds a Ventura Police Department case number.
which leads to Lyman and Charlene Smith's murders in 1980.
Right. Poole's dedication, his eye for detail, uncovers another brutal double homicide with potential links. Suddenly the scope is much broader, raises new questions about his movements, his motives.
They shared evidence between counties, Orange and Ventura, but some swabs were missing. Yeah, highlights the challenges back then. Limitations in how evidence was collected, preserved, potentially crucial info lost to time, unfortunately.
And the theory about Charlene Smith being a stand-in for the killer's resentment of women.
It's a disturbing psychological theory, isn't it? Suggests this deep-seated hatred, this rage towards women, manifesting in that horrific violence.
So the body count is climbing. 6 known victims by then. And investigators realize this guy is adaptable, mobile. They start looking hard at Santa Barbara connections again.
Exactly. As the linked cases piled up and he kept evading capture, they had to widen the net geographically.
Then there's that incident in Goleta, October 79. Linda Offerman's dog, Chemo, gets stabbed a week before the first attack there.
It feels like a warning, doesn't it? A sinister escalation. Testing boundaries, maybe observing reactions before the actual home invasion started.
And the first Goleta attack on Queen Anne Lane. The flashlight, the whispering, the binding.
It's disturbingly familiar. A clear link to the earlier attacks, miles away, shows that consistent, evolving MO. The chanting he did there adds another disturbing layer, almost ritualistic.
Then there's the story of Debbie Domingo and her mother, Cherry, their difficult relationship. Debbie ran away shortly before her mom was murdered.
Such a tragic backdrop. That family strife adds another layer of personal tragedy. Debbie being gone likely saved her life, but imagine the guilt, the turmoil that added for the family.
It's Santa Barbara.
Yeah.
The book describes it as beguiling but deceptive, beauty masking darkness.
Yeah, it highlights that unsettling truth. Even seemingly perfect, beautiful places aren't immune to this kind of brutality.
Sherry trying to help Debbie, talking to her friend Ellen.
Yeah.
Just everyday life tragically cut short.
Those small details really hammer home the human cost. Ordinary lives just shattered.
Finding Cherry Domingo and Gregory Sanchez's bodies in 1981, both nude, Sanchez partially in the closet,
Yeah.
the missing pipe wrench likely used as a weapon. Another brutal scene.
Horrific details. Suggests extreme violence, complete control. The missing tools becoming weapons adds to the sheer brutality.
A neighbor heard dogs barking around 2:49 a.m.
Another small detail. Often overlooked, but sometimes those observations from neighbors can be vital. Help establish timelines, pinpoint unusual activity.
And Orange County investigators initially suspected the killer came from Goleta.
Yeah, based on the timeline and location then, Goleta became an early theory for his base of operations.
Then the story of Loss, the neighbor, chasing a bicyclist the night Chemo was stabbed.
A near miss.
A huge near miss. A moment where he could have been caught, but the cyclist got away, allowed the terror to continue.
And Linda Offerman, later remembering Chemo's injury, pinpointing the date as September 24th, a week before the first attack.
Right, her memory confirms that timeline. Supports the idea of that escalating behavior before the first Goleta attack.
Detectives realized the creek area was important. Dropped ligatures, shoe prints found there.
Suggests a familiar route for him, right? Possible access, escape. Shows he knew the local terrain. Okay, fast forward to 1997. Paul Holes gets interested again. He's working in Contra Costa County.
And he notes the distinct MO in Northern California, the ER phase. Robbery as a ruse, avoiding kissing or touching breasts, ransacking, targeting sleeping couples.
Stacking dishes on the man's back.
Right. And knowing details about victims' lives, it's remarkably consistent for a long time up there.
The later escalation to murder in Southern California marks that disturbing shift.
It does. And the case was just pervasive. So many people had a story related to it. The fear was widespread, lasting.
Evidence getting destroyed in Sacramento, East Bay.
Yeah.
Routine procedures, statute of limitations. Frustrating.
Huge obstacle for cold cases, but Contra Costa County had kept its files. That proved absolutely crucial.
Holes hit some dead ends, initially trying to get info from Santa Barbara,
Yeah.
then gets pointed to Irvine.
Which leads him to Mary Hung in Orange County. And the DNA profile. The definitive link.
Yeah.
East Area rapist, original Night Stalker, same guy. Huge moment.
So they build this composite picture of the Aarons. Physical traits, habits, size 9 shoe, blood type A, non-secretor.
Phone calls, ski mask, flashlight, bindings, the script he used claiming he needed money or food, the baby lotion, stolen bikes. Specific items he took?
Possible statements he made, the sobbing reported in late 77, possible vehicles.
It's pieced together from so many accounts. Provides a clearer image, but still, the disguise, the voice alteration, made identifying him incredibly hard for decades.
And the online community, the ER-on-S board, citizen detectives, crowdsourcing solutions.
They played a big role, keeping the case alive, sharing information, theories. Some wild theories, sure, but the collective effort was powerful.
Like the kid. His research was apparently incredibly meticulous.
Yeah, McNamara notes he even surpassed her efforts at one point. Shows the dedication you find in that online true crime world. She tells that story where he correctly dismisses a suspect she was looking into.
And Richard Shelby. Back to him. Recognizing the serial pattern early. His thoughts on why more people didn't report suspicious things back then.
Gives you that context of the time. His early insights were vital, and his observations highlight the challenges, getting the public to really see and report things then.
The old police reports. Limited in some ways, but the emotional details.
So powerful. The mother trying to cut her bindings with her kid's toy saw, the little girl asking her dog why it didn't bark, didn't help. Those moments just stick with you. Unforgettable.
And the ER stalking. Not just individuals, but whole neighborhoods. Using canals, green belts.
Targeting second houses from corners, doing reconnaissance prowling, small burglaries of little items, hang-up calls, reveals such a calculated predator.
Methodical and patient. Knew the environment, used it to stay hidden.
Then you have the Concord attack in '78, the victim's daughter sleeping through it, the house similarity, the Stockton woman who didn't buy his crying act, called it high-pitched hysteria, or even laughter.
The non-functional 911 number in unincorporated San Ramon just paints a picture of the era, the vulnerabilities.
Right, and his brazenness sometimes. That incident with the joggers in Danville seeing him, the stepside pickup truck mentioned. Moments of surprising audacity.
Though he was usually cautious. But occasionally he took risks, which could have led to him being identified.
Then the Danville attack in 1979, Esther McDonald. And the police dog, PETA, acting strangely at the railroad tracks.
Animal instincts, maybe? Picking up something humans missed?
It makes you wonder. Suggests a scent, a trail maybe, that warranted more investigation. Untapped potential of trained animals sometimes.
And the Danville police reports using the term the perpetrator seems deliberate.
Yeah, it feels like a stark condemnation. Reflects their clear understanding of the severity, the criminal nature of his acts.
Then the homework evidence found in Danville, the essay on Custer, the mad is the word journal entry about a teacher.
And the hand-drawn map, Holes thought it showed professional knowledge, landscape architecture, maybe development.
Doodling punishment on the back of the map.
It's a rare potential window into his background, his interests. Holes' theory connecting it to land development was compelling, even if unproven then, contrasting a likely middle-class background with this extreme criminality.
And still, no match in CODIS, the DNA database, when it came online. No familial hit either.
Which was a major hurdle. Led to speculation. Maybe a straight-laced family with no prior criminal record made finding him through DNA much harder initially.
Holes' approach shines through here. Methodical criminalist. Separating fact from speculation, correcting inaccurate details in victim statements.
So crucial, that objectivity, that precision in forensic analysis.
Briefly mentions the Eichler home attack in Walnut Creek.
Yeah.
Their design, limited night visibility, maybe a factor.
Could be. Those architectural features might have offered vulnerabilities, easier access, or less visibility at night.
And they revisit Elaine Davis's 1969 disappearance from Walnut Creek, unsolved. Found button, loafer, a potential earlier link they considered.
Right, another cold case in the same area. Raise that possibility. Was there an earlier undetected crime connected to him?
Holes keeps developing his land development theory. Based on the homework evidence, a Modesto cab driver dropping someone near new construction.
The Davis footprints leading towards the UC Davis airport. A Stockton victim worked for a major developer. A landscape architect confirmed unique features from village homes in Davis were on the ER's map.
All these threads pointing potentially in one direction.
Yeah, a fascinating hypothesis pulling together diverse clues. Offered a plausible, though still speculative, explanation for his knowledge of these areas. His evasion skills.
Detective Corbett tracking those unusual shoe prints in Davis.
Yeah.
Suggested advanced tracking abilities, maybe.
Could point to certain backgrounds, maybe military, maybe extensive outdoor activity. And village homes in Davis, unique design.
Interconnected green belts, cul-de-sacs, described as a predator's paradise.
Yeah. The design, meant to be communal and eco-friendly, inadvertently created paths for someone to move unseen, access homes easily.
And those carpooling connections between victims in Davis and then between a Davis victim and a later Danville victim.
Unsettling details, never fully explored at the time. raises that disturbing idea he might have observed and selected victims through their normal routines. Missed opportunities.
Then there's Philip Hughes, breaking into houses nude, stealing women's clothing, a disturbing potential precursor.
Shows how seemingly lesser offenses can sometimes escalate or indicate deeper issues that might lead to violence.
And Ray, the investigator, talking to prowlers and peepers, their pride in not being noticed.
Gives you insight into that mindset, right? The voyeuristic focus on stealth, the satisfaction from evading detection.
The report on Greer. Stopped near an ear rape, quiet guy, suspicious stuff in his trunk, lived in a trashed storage trailer, had a work alibi for one attack. The investigators never forgot him.
Yeah, his case highlights how important thorough follow-up is. Lingering suspicion, even with an initial alibi, they later tried to get his DNA.
And Doug Fiedler.
Yeah.
Seems like a nice catch initially, but DNA cleared him.
Shows the power of DNA again, to definitively include or exclude suspects.
And the reflection on having too much data. Getting stuck on patterns.
It's a real danger in complex investigations. Analysis is vital, but you have to stay open-minded, not get tunnel vision on one theory, and miss other clues.
Patton Oswalt's analogy, comparing the investigators to Rocky training relentlessly.
It's a great image. Really captures that dedication, the resilience needed for cold cases, facing years of frustration, setbacks, but just keeping going.
McNamara's singular focus on this one case, then investigating Walther, found with steak knives making similar threats, trying to track him down. Clark's frustration with past investigative mistakes.
It all just underscores that intense personal investment from everyone involved trying to solve this horrific series.
And those big questions still hanging out there. What brought him to Sacramento initially? The timing of that military navigation training transfer possibility. Enduring mystery.
Key pieces missing from the puzzle. Could provide crucial insights into his origins, motives, timeline.
The sheer scale of his crimes. Just unprecedented, really.
Compared to other notorious unsolved cases, yeah, the number of attacks, the duration, just a staggering reign of terror.
McNamara's research goals were ambitious. Lists of residents trying to track people down decades later.
And Paul Holes connecting with her early on through her True Crime Diary website. Her profile of the ER, meticulous.
They were building the case, piece by piece, facing huge challenges without a central database back then.
Yeah, trying to identify suspects without modern tools. They had to be incredibly resourceful, using public records, creating resident lists manually, labor-intensive work.
Geographic profiling? Probably didn't work well for his early movements, right? He seemed to intentionally spread out.
Likely irrelevant for the early motivations, yeah. Seemed like deliberate geographic displacement. Holes even tried his own improvised geographic profiling later.
You see Hole's dedication just growing, fueled by his own obsession, as he calls it, with the ER case.
His innovative thinking, his unwavering commitment.
Yeah.
It was absolutely instrumental.
And then that moment, Holes finally gets a potential DNA match. Using genetic genealogy, finding that extremely rare marker.
A massive turning point after all those years of relentless searching.
Ultimately, Michelle McNamara's impact. It's undeniable, her unique quality.
Absolutely. That blend of investigative skill, deep empathy for the victims, and her powerful writing. It brought so much renewed attention, played a crucial role in pushing towards the resolution.
The book contrasts the anecdotal and broader examples of her originality.
Yeah, she had this unique way of seeing connections, of telling the story.
Returning to that image she creates, the faceless wrecker, all the details of his crimes, the voyeurism, the threats, the items he stole, documented in flawed reports.
Contrasting his past prowess, his ability to terrify and disappear, with his present vulnerability, in a world now full of surveillance, DNA tech.
And her final words in the book. So powerful. Open the door, show us your face, walk into the light.
Just a direct, potent challenge, demanding accountability, bringing his long reign of terror out of the dark.
It's an incredible journey. And for more of these kinds of in-depth explorations and chances to really think critically, you can explore Mindful Moments and our podcasts.
Definitely. This case has so many layers. It really invites ongoing reflection. It's not something you easily forget.
So subscribe to our channel for more analyses like this one. Share it with others who might be interested.
Yeah.
Consider picking up Michelle McNamara's book. The link's in the description. It really supports this kind of work.
And most importantly, keep thinking critically about the information you encounter, about these complex stories.